Welcome to Touched and Empowered, a show created to empower individuals to value their lives by hosting think tank discussions that will inspire positive action. Touched and Empowered with Katie and Ace starts now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Touched and Empowered with Katie Miller and myself, Ace Dolagosa. We will be talking about finance today and how those adversities and some of the most fascinating journeys in our lives have brought us into a state of empowerment, and even the people that have empowered us through their own journeys as well.
Always fun to have the money talk.
Right? The money talk. The talk that scares everyone right now.
Yes. And the talk that is like, well, why did they teach us this in school?
I think it's, I have so much to talk about on that one.
I know, I do too.
So like, I don't know about you. So I grew up I don't want to say I wasn't financially educated. I think my mom is actually an incredible whiz at finance. And she has like a very fast intellectual speed of learning, I guess you can say. So she learned how to manage money in a way where I'm like, you're keeping us alive here. Yeah.
And that's amazing that she has that, because I know that from what I remember growing up, there was always the argument about money.
That was common. I mean, I feel like that also still happened. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't peaceful when it came to money in my home. And I think a lot of it had to do with education. So my parents, they're immigrant generation, right?
Right.
So they kind of had to learn how they went. My dad is the person who taught me how to be frugal, which is really great. So if I look flashy, ladies and gentlemen, it's not because I bought it. A good portion of the time, it was a gift. So
the fine art of frugality.
Right. Well, understanding what's necessary and what's not really grounds you, right?
It does. And that is something that I wish that I had growing up. I don't remember being taught to shop sales. I don't remember being taught to look for value before I spent money.
Interesting. Okay.
We never talked about money. I remember having my first job at the age of 14, working part-time while I was still in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being 18, still in high school, and having to go to the eye doctors to get a new pair of glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And I paid like $150 for my glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And this was back in the late 90s. So just so you know about why the price is like, oh, that's cheap. I got home and found out that apparently we had eye coverage to help pay for glasses and lenses and stuff like that I didn't know that we had. And I'm like, well, I didn't have a card. And they're like, oh, all you have to do is tell them that you have VSP. VSP is fabulous, by the way. I absolutely love it.
VSP is fantastic.
Yes, for those of us with glasses. But so I got the lecture from the stepdad about how I should have known this information. So I went back to the eyeglasses place and told them that, you know, I found out that the family does have eye insurance and I need to fix my purchase, and then got a lecture from the person at the eyeglass store about how I should have had this information to begin with.
That's not fair.
No, it wasn't. I was getting lectured from both directions. And so that, on top of one comment that my stepdad said that said, you are horrible at managing money, I was like, okay.
That's not good either.
And that was a limiting belief. That's a limiting belief that I've had for the longest time.
Oh, isn't it great when we have those beliefs and then it takes us 20 to 30 years to get them out of our brain?
Oh my gosh, it's taken me that long to figure out how to balance a checkbook.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's real. It's real.
It's
like
real.
I think my mom gave me the limiting belief, but I don't think it's a limiting belief. I think it's fascinating. She's like, you're expensive. And I was like, I'm not expensive. And that made me want to learn how to like find, like you said, find the value in things and whatnot, because I just didn't want to be expensive. And then it took me a while to realize like I wasn't being expensive. There is a difference between paying $7 for something that you're going to keep around for 3 months and you have to keep buying it every 3 months versus buying something for $21 and it lasts you 3 years.
Right.
Right. There's like a very big difference here. And I'm talking about makeup. Like it's right.
Well, that's a good place to start. That's
Yeah,
really a good place to start, because that's normally for girls anyways, or not necessarily girls, but those who like to wear makeup.
Mhm.
That's one of the first purchases as teenagers.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So we might as well start with what is it that we purchased when we first start to have money on a regular basis
Mhm.
that we actually have access to. Because
Mhm.
I know I got money for birthdays and Christmas before I turned 14. I just never saw it.
Interesting. Yeah, no,
It went into a savings account that, oh, we have a savings account for you. And when I turned 18, I'm like, so where's my savings? And it could not be found.
oh wow. You know,
Apparently it paid for my graduation stuff. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to argue.
yeah, those were the conversations that were always so hard at home, right?
Yes.
And it's so interesting because sure, don't get me wrong, when it comes to money at home, it was like, especially if you're middle class, because the education for finance wasn't there in everyday school or whatnot. And I'm not saying like blaming school, they should have taught us. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it should be aware to the the economy of the United States. About 97% of the United States is financially illiterate and 3% are literate. There's a big reason for it. It's there weren't programs to teach these skills.
Right.
For
and that's one of the things that I, as a mom, was looking for
Mhm.
to make sure that my son was in a better position than I am, or
Mhm.
was. I'm going to say I am, because I still struggle on occasions with finances,
Mhm.
because I don't have a safety net built. That is coming.
And it's so interesting because like I keep saying interesting because what I'm really saying, yeah, it's interesting in the positive scheme of things. Yes. On the other scheme of things, it was rough. That's what that means. Like
Yes.
in other words, we didn't know what, how, why, and then the resource would be gone. And it like I didn't see money as a resource sometimes. And then that would feed into this poverty mindset that just kept activating and anxiety driving my financial
Future?
future and decisions, right?
Yeah, future decisions, because I know I was very financially illiterate. I got out of the house at the age of 18. I went to San Francisco for like 4 months, and then came back to the East Coast, moved in with my husband to be, and we got married. And all of this was without speaking to my parents. So I had no idea how being married was going to change the finances, because I never shared a checking account with somebody before.
The taxes,
the taxes, and I'm like, what happened to all this money I was getting back from the government that isn't there now that I'm married? I actually told my husband he was too expensive.
Oh, is that why you laughed? I was like,
yeah, because I told him he was too expensive because I wasn't getting as much money back on my tax refund. And he just shook his head at me. He's like, you will learn. He's older than I am, so he kind of already knew all of this stuff at this point. And I'm like, well, I don't know this stuff. No one taught me.
No one. So when I started learning this stuff, and I'm saying stuff like it's this ambiguous thing that we don't actually know, right? I started learning this stuff after I quit a corporate gig at 24 in finance and accounting. And I was like literally person archiving the backup data. You know, basically if you get audited, essentially you have to have a specific type of, you have to have certain
documents, receipts
in place so that you can justify your expenses, right?
Right.
And I was archiving that on a weekly basis of over this was at a larger talent agency, right? That just went from mom and pops to like TPG bought 51% of this company.
Wow.
Yes. So it was a multi-million global conglomerate, right? And I was archiving literally the backup of all of the, anyways, it was millions of dollars essentially that I was looking at and archiving data for. And for the time that I understood what that meant, I was like, okay, I got this. This is cool. All right. I didn't know that I was getting my master's in like business while I was archiving this stuff. And then when I left to go start my own thing, right, I knew how to manage that. And I found out that about maybe 70%, a lot, probably more of business owners don't know how to do that.
Oh, I didn't know. For the first 2 years that I have been self-employed with my own business, I had no idea the things that I could claim as a business expense. I didn't know that me taking a certification course to be a coach counted as education instead of like college education.
Right.
Apparently it does. I didn't realize that I can get some money back on the internet that I have at the house, because internet is a requirement for my job because everything's online now.
Mm-hmm. I even have a specific life insurance now that I found out is a business expense. Like, it's great.
Oh my goodness.
All right, let me talk about that. So there is a air quotes multi-level networking type of
multi-level marketing, multi-level
network marketing. Yeah, that
network marketing.
Yeah, and a lot of people find that to be a scam. Don't get me wrong, sometimes it can be. But when it came to WFG, World Financial Group,
mm-hmm.
So I worked with, I don't know if you guys know him. His name is Cash Raston. So he was actually in the Think and Grow Rich documentary.
Okay.
Right. So I worked with him and like one of his mentees and understood financial education from their point of view. So if you think about life insurance is a bunch of different things. Okay. One, it helps you to realize like, oh, cool, there's a money stored away in case I pass away.
Right, to help cover medical bills or final expenses or
right.
whatever.
Right, it's a great policy, especially when you're 24. Why would I be getting life insurance when I'm 24? And I'll explain that in a second. Two.
I can tell you why I would want to buy it at the age of 24.
And we're gonna give you that.
We'll get that.
Yeah. Two, there's also, when you think of life insurance, if you get a specific term life insurance,
mm-hmm.
I took the test on this, can you believe it? You can actually use that like a stock with exponential growth, right? So once you start putting money in that bucket of savings, air quote savings, this little bucket, it just keeps making money every year and exponentially grows. And by the time you're 40 from the age of 24, if you have one of these, you can be a freaking millionaire.
Very nice.
Right? I didn't get that. I wasn't smart like that. I didn't get it then. I should have, but I didn't. Number three.
No shooting on yourself.
Good. Thank you. We'll make more in other ways, but
okay.
The third thing that you can also do with these specific types of packages is, let's say you do end up having a really, like, for instance, I was freaking nervous about the, what's it called? The concussion that I had.
Yes.
Mild concussion that I had. I was really nervous because I was like, shoot, what if I can't be productive anymore for like longer than a month? I need to work. Right.
Sure.
And don't get me wrong, you can file for disability, you can go for many different things, but there's also a fund within my life insurance package that says if I were to be in any specific type of situations of disability, I could receive monthly income from my life insurance package.
Oh, that's a nice benefit to have.
Right, wasn't it? I was just like, oh, I'm so happy about that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's like amazing, because, when, for example, I still have my corporate job at this point, but I was out of work for almost 5 months because of pneumonia.
Oh, yeah. So of course, everything has to be documented, one.
Right.
And two, there were like 5 or 6 qualifiers as to like, if I had brain trauma and I couldn't do specific things, then yes, then I can actually take out money. Right.
Which makes sense that they're going to have the rules for it, because they don't want, it has to be something that is worth it, not one of these, oh, I hit my head and I'm good 3 days later. It, something that is serious.
Exactly. And same thing with like, if you are in a coma, like,
Yeah.
it's triggered.
That's pretty serious. I'd say that was pretty serious.
When I found out that there was one for being in a coma, I'm like, who the heck finds out if I'm in a coma and triggers this thing? Of course, you have a beneficiary. Right. Like, so make sure you trust your. Anyways, so WFG hands out these life insurance packages, but they also teach you the entrepreneurial lens of this. So you don't necessarily want to continue working from a 9 to 5 and only getting breadcrumbs for the rest of your life, right?
Right.
A lot of people don't. And what WFG did was help you change that mindset to a degree. Some people could go into it for the financial education, or people could do it to make money in sales and go rah and make money on life insurance. Sure, do your thing. And the other part is you can invest in your own life insurance policy and therefore invest that way, right? So the educational component was very important. They understood their mission. They understood that 97% of the country needed financial education.
And that is absolutely fantastic that they offer that.
Mm-hmm. They did for free, even before purchasing the life insurance. Like, they didn't care. They wanted you to be educated because they understood the market.
Wow.
Right. So this is coming from Cash Raston's, of course, the teams that he led. Just right. And what was really interesting is, like, have you ever seen this? There's like a chart. I forgot exactly. It was like employee, consultant, business owner, and then investor.
Yes, I have seen that, those 4 squares with those categories.
Right. So those 4 squares have 4 different mindsets. And depending on which mindset you're in, will you be able to perform like that specific person? So if you're an employee waiting for people to give you money, right?
Right.
If you don't break out of that mindset, you won't become a consultant, nor will you become a business owner.
True.
Right? Yeah.
Unless something forces your hand to flip that mindset, like losing your corporate job.
Yeah. Right.
Flip the mindset.
So with each level, you actually just take more responsibility for your life. Mm-hmm. Right? Take more responsibility for your finances. And each level also comes with more risk, which means you come with more courage.
That makes sense.
Right. Even if you're forced to do it, you like find the courage somewhere and you're just gonna go. Right. That's really important for people to understand. And most of the time, everyone's in the employee mindset.
Which makes sense, because that's how most of us have seen life from what our parents do.
Yes.
Most of us have parents who work 9 to 5. They have a job. They have a job where they work for somebody else and get paid for their time and their skills.
Yes.
So looking at other business opportunities, mm-hmm. to where you aren't the one who's earning the paycheck from someone else, but you are more in control of how the money flows your general direction.
Exactly.
And that can start with a one-on-one partnership with somebody, that could then move to you being a solopreneur, to then having a small business where you then pay people for their time. Mm-hmm. So it is a journey to go through. And I think that it is possible for anybody to do it.
It is very possible. I think what I find interesting is, like, people who don't speak English have done it, right? They've figured it out. Like, they
also have a drive.
Yes.
Because they have a drive to live the American dream.
Yes. And that is
I grew up with the American dream being you own a house, not that you own a business.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, my mom did the same. She was a nurse. Father, same way. He's been a building engineer for years, right? I want to so I've been getting this really fascinating download. May I share it with you?
Yes, of course.
Do I look like I'm made of millions of dollars?
From my point of view, you do have that kind of classy Hollywood look to you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Then I guess my style looks expensive.
Yes. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you. The words have reverberated through the presentation. Thank you, Mother.
No, you have a sense of identity when you talk and when you are sitting or standing or presenting that leads me to believe that you know more than what you're sharing. So therefore, you must be paid well for your knowledge.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
I know that I look like everybody else's mother, so.
With these unicorns, we're unique. What do you?
We're very unique. Very unique.
I appreciate that. I want to say the way that I've been educated is 100% what's been shown, right?
Right.
So, for example, when I was working, when I was an NBC page, I was next to Fortune 500 women, right? So I got to learn from osmosis from what they could do and how they could perform, right?
Which makes sense. Again, our environment does influence us in one way or another.
Yes. Yes.
Especially when we're in the whole learning aspect time of our lives.
Yes. Yes. And then when I was in finance and accounting, I remember holding a check for Steven Spielberg and just looking at how much he gets on a monthly basis because he worked there. And I was just like, this is a month. So that energy is on me for sure.
That's oh, that's a lot of zeros.
So that's a lot of spaces for where a digit's going. I didn't know it could keep going like that in a month, but I was there, right? And also understanding those habits. Something to look into is 177 mental health habits of the world class. Fantastic book. Cash actually recommended it, and I read all of it within 2 weeks. It is that good.
Oh,
it is good. It does show you exactly the difference between what is a habit that would help you build your own spiritual and not build your spiritual wealth, I want to say, but the habits that you can put into place so that you can create your own economy.
that is really smart.
Yes, it's a great book. Highly recommend it. Think and Grow Rich is another excellent book. I want to say, if you do read that book, what I want to recommend very much is to have a coach to help you implement what is happening in that book. Because if you don't have that, the knowledge is there, but if you don't take the action that the book requires, you just wasted $35.
True. And that's with a lot of these books that are out there that are absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
We can absorb the knowledge, but if we don't absorb how to implement it, then it's just trivia.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You could say it, you could talk about it, you can talk about it in circles, but that doesn't mean you're actually living it. And I think a lot of people understood those basics, then they would also understand that a lot of those limiting beliefs to keep us all right, so there's this really weird conundrum that I've been witnessing, right? Okay. So because I grew up middle class, I also taught kids that were middle to lower, when it comes to economic background, middle class to lower poverty level, and their parents, right, just hearing how their parents went about money.
Yep.
Just made sense as to what the barriers are.
And I didn't catch on to that until I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Great book. I actually haven't read it, so
Oh, it's a great book. The author, his dad was the quote unquote poor dad, and his friend's dad was the rich dad. And he was making comparisons when he was home and when he was over at his friend's house as to how his dad thought versus his friend's dad thought. His dad would be home checking the Sunday newspaper for coupons and sales for grocery shopping and everything like that, versus his friend's dad was checking the same newspaper for investment opportunities. So it's all, the whole being open to look for something else besides what we were told or what we got impressed upon us from our parents as to this is how it's always done. And that's not the case.
Yeah. And it's like, I remember when I started doing stocks, and I kid you not, I was 24.
Good for you.
I was not good at it. I was freaking horrible. I was absolutely terrible at it.
I tried it for 3 months and then quit. I'm like, this is too complicated for my brain.
Well,
and I know I probably should have played a little bit. I just should it on myself. There's a lot of long-term gain in stocks, and you have to be patient. And when I was doing it at 27, 28, I did not have the patience for it.
I understand that. And it was, so I actually spoke to an advisor about this, and I call him an advisor. So he became a partner at an investment firm. And he also, I can't say his name right now, just for specific purposes, but he was giving me these tips on how to trade, also understanding my background, because he knew that minorities in the United States aren't taught this financial education. Usually it's passed down from parent to
child.
Not everyone has that. It's fine. So he knew that, and he wanted to advocate and like help people that are in that situation. So he was teaching me how to do this. He was also, it came down to, there's no set way.
Right.
It was, what's your style? What are your purposes for investing? Why, are you interested in long-term or short-term? What's your risk level? Like, he wanted to assess all of that, because that is a big part in playing into this. And I was like, funny enough, I'm actually a lot more conservative than I look when it comes to right. So I was like,
good though.
Thank you. So he was like, all right, these are the four that you need to, these are the four main ones that you need to invest in. And it was true. There were like 4 ETFs that were international. And I used that as like a savings account, essentially.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because your savings account, if you put money into a savings account over 10 years, you actually lost 50% of what you could have had.
In a traditional savings, yes, because I've found that the rate of return is nowhere near what it can be with some of these other strategies.
Right. Your APR is what, 3%?
If that, sometimes 4% when it's really high, but right now I don't think it's 3%.
Robinhood, if you get their debit card, by the way, Robinhood is easy stock exchange that you put on your phone. If you get their debit card, they will give you a 4.4% every month on what you haven't invested. It's hilarious. I'm just like, wow, this is so much better. Like, what?
You know what? But that makes sense. It's a way to train you to put money away and to save it. And it's great that you have access to it with the debit card, but you're not going to earn the interest if you put the money in and then take it right back out.
Unless you have you already know, and this is the balancing game, right? Once you find out that the stock that you invested in has a rate of like an ROI of more than 4.4%, like that's the only time that balance makes sense. And those are the tiny, small things to be aware of. a lot of people don't take that time to understand it, and they don't know that they have to if you want to really grow what you have over time.
Yeah, because the impression that I got growing up was all of that was handled by a financial advisor. And you didn't need a financial advisor in your life until after you made six figures.
Fascinating. Yes, I know that. I understand that. I didn't know that there was that limit.
Well, again, limiting belief I was grown up with. That's what my stepfather had said.
Okay, I see.
So I didn't know any different.
And that's fair. I didn't know any different either.
So, but I have expanded my knowledge on finances and stuff since I became a mom. And when Austin was 14, which is in the state of Maryland, you can get a work permit and start working part-time.
New Jersey, same.
We had included Austin in the financial conversations as the household.
That's smart.
As to, okay, holidays are coming up. Where can we start saving money to put money aside? So then that way we can do things like buy fun gifts or go somewhere. So we had included Austin in those conversations. So then that way he was aware that money doesn't grow on trees and that you do need to plan accordingly if you want to save up for something. And awesome. That I think has helped him with his finances while he's off at college, because he knows he gets a set dollar amount from me every month, and that's his budget unless he adds money to it with his part-time job.
Excellent. Okay.
He recently started a part-time job on campus.
So
I'm like, more power to you. That means that part of the money I give you, you need to automatically put in your savings account.
Which is excellent because he doesn't have to pay for rent. He doesn't.
No, all of that's included. All of that's included on campus. He stays on campus.
There you go.
But yeah, he doesn't pay rent when he comes home. He doesn't pay for groceries because my husband loves stocking the pantry with all of my son's favorite foods and then complaining about him raiding the pantry when he comes home on the weekends. And I'm like, but you filled it just for that purpose. And he goes, I'm giving him a hard time. Shut up. Stop being so logical. I'm like, whatever. It must be a dad thing for him. He has fun with it.
So, all right. So I had this really cool ability when I was young, and my mom loved it. She really loved it. I wasn't included on the financial
conversations.
Right. A good portion of the time they weren't in English. And that's fine.
Yes.
And that was okay, but I was really good at negotiating and I didn't know where it came from. So I remember this one time my mom got this free trip to Cancun, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And it was off of those sales like, hey, let's come see what it's like, and then you get a timeshare.
Right.
Somehow, I don't know how this happened, I was able to negotiate it for free for my mother.
Nice.
Yeah, I was 16. She just put me in the chair and she was like, all right, go ahead. And I'm sitting there like, oh, this is fun. Like I actually could, she did.
It was a game.
It was a game to me. And I didn't recognize what chips I was playing with here. Because think about this. My mother is a nurse. It is hard to become a nurse. And not only is it hard to become a nurse, you get paid well if you make it.
Right.
Especially for how long she was working. She had a 6-figure salary as a nurse. And that was the network that they needed to sell these timeshares to, because that network had the money to pay them.
Right.
Right. So they gave us the timeshare for free, as long as we gave them 2 to 3 names that they could call every year.
Nice.
Right. I had no idea what happened when I walked away from the table. Had no clue. And that was an ability that I just had, right? Like I understood resources.
Yep. For me, it was my negotiation skills came from going to yard sales.
That's brilliant.
And it wasn't even my mom or my stepdad who taught me. It was one of the neighbors. because they had like a movie or something that I wanted to get. And let's say, for example, it was $1. And I walked up to him with $1. He goes, no, you're supposed to negotiate. I'm like, why? I've got the money to pay for it. He goes, no, you negotiate, and this is what you do. And he taught me the beginnings of negotiation. And then at the end of the day, when I finished it, because we lived in a court, so it was pretty much you walk around the whole thing, you do a lap. Cool. When we had a community yard sale. So when I did my lap, I walked past his table and I'm like, look at all this stuff I got for $5.
Oh, it's so good.
So, I mean, I thought I was like, ooh, it's a game. It was a game at that point. And that's when I, now looking back at it, I was like, dude, I need to make it a game with paying my bills.
See, that's how that works too, right? Like it's become like if you don't have fun with it, you won't make money. Nor will you save.
Well, I think it's a combination of fun and gratitude.
Yes, fun and gratitude. I agree.
Because I am grateful that I have the money to pay for the mortgage to keep a roof over my head. I am grateful that I have the money to pay for the health insurance and the car insurance and, all of these other things. And I found that with expressing it with gratitude, it doesn't feel like I'm draining the bank account. I don't get that icky feeling in my stomach when it comes to paying bills anymore.
That's great. That's really good. Like being grateful to pay for things is really important. I feel like a lot of people get stuck in I can't believe I have to pay for this. Yeah. Don't go there. Like that's actually the fastest way you burn out on money.
That's the fastest way it disappears.
Yes. What you should be doing is like starting even from the purchase, like knowing if you're doing something that's gradual every month, understand the benefits that you're going to receive with the payment. Right. If you agree to those terms, you really agree to those terms, truly agree to those terms, like seriously agree to those terms, then you should have no resentment after you you say, yes, I will pay for this every month.
And on the side note, for when you get yourself stuck into a situation where you have a large credit card bill that you can't pay anymore, call the credit card company. Make arrangements for them to take a lower dollar amount automatically out of your account every month. That way you are still meeting the agreement of the credit card, so it doesn't affect your credit card rates and it pays off your balance. You just don't use the credit card during that time frame, during the whatever agreed about time frame that you did.
Yes. Full disclosure, we are not financial advisors.
No, we are not financial advisors. This is just a tip that
these are tips that we've learned.
We've learned. And for me, it was after having a huge amount of medical bills.
Right.
I maxed out 3 credit cards to pay a whole bunch of medical bills when my husband was in the intensive care unit for 2.5 weeks.
Yeah. It's like,
so I had 3 credit cards that had, instead of it being the minimum amount of like $300 a month, they each reduced it to, ballparking it, because this was a couple of years ago, we'll say like $125 a piece. And it automatically came out of my bank account every month. So I didn't have to worry about paying it because I knew what day it was coming out every month. I knew that the money would be there because I was already, forking out $900. Now it's, almost $400. And that made it easier for me to manage the rest of the bills in the house during that point in time. And on all of those cards, I had one card that they decided that I was no longer going to have an account with them. That is perfectly fine. But the other 2 cards, once it was paid off, they're like, okay, you're good. You're free to use the cards again.
That's great.
So I have those in reserve because I try very hard not to use my credit cards, except for each has one reoccurring subscription on it that I pay off every month to build up my credit score.
That's awesome. That's excellent and really good to know. And it's important. A lot of people don't understand that. Maybe we should revisit the life insurance policy now that you mentioned that.
I think that would be good because I know that I had a life insurance policy, but it was through my corporate job.
Okay. So you
Lost
didn't.
the corporate job. There was no way to take it with me.
Gotcha. I actually have 2 insurance policies. So let's talk about why it's good to get one when you're 24. Katie, please explain why it's a good idea.
For me, it was because I was a mom. And at that particular moment in time, I had a newborn. My son was born in 2003. So he was a few months old when I turned 24. And I got the first life insurance policy for us at that point in time because of the fact that I knew that if something happened to me or something happened to my husband and we had a single parent raising a kid, money was going to be needed to take care of the final expenses, any bills that were just in my name or just in his name. So then that way there would still be money to put aside for kid to go to school. And so they were not the best ones out there. They were very generic term coverage, but it was the only thing I knew to get at that point in time. When I got my corporate job, I let that policy go because it was horrible and what it actually covered, and got it through my work, because through my work, I was able to get a policy that was 6 times my annual income.
Amazing.
And after working there for 14 years, that was a good chunk of change.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had been able to continue the position and continue working with Nationwide, that would have just continued to grow to 6 times my salary for me and like 4 times my salary for my husband and like 2 times my salary for my son.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, COVID hit. Everyone was told to stay home. No one was driving on the roads. Kind of makes it hard to do an auto insurance job if there's no accidents to investigate. So that's one of the reasons why my position was eliminated.
I see. Okay. Well, see, that makes sense.
Now it makes perfect sense when you think about it from the logical standpoint that there was literally nobody on the roads driving, so there were no accidents to investigate.
Right.
Now we have minimal life insurance, a couple $1,000s a piece for final expenses only, because I have not found something that is affordable that covers everything that we want. I know we'll get it.
Wow, I need to refer you to my agents. Let's do that. We're going to do this after the podcast. If anybody, there's these 2 wonderful individuals. One of them, gosh, wow. Yeah, I've been very fortunate and very grateful in regards to life insurance. And it's so important because when people, all right, ladies and gentlemen, you can get it through your corporate gig, yes. Yes. But when you really understand what's in it, when you get, when somebody comes up to you and they assess you and kind of figure out your lifestyle and whatnot. I have a life insurance policy that's only $33 a month, and it will be that until I die.
Oh no, that's manageable.
What?
I said that's manageable. That's a manageable dollar amount.
Yes.
That's like a tank of gas.
Thank you. Thank you. You know why? Because I got it when I was 24.
Yeah, I believe that.
If I got it later, it would have been a lot more expensive because it would have been a lot more urgent.
Yes, I know, because I am early 40s.
Yes.
And the price of me getting it for me is almost 3 times what it is for my son, who's 19.
Yeah, it's and that's what, in the hundreds, 200s, right?
Yeah, compared to him getting it for around $20 a month.
Right. It is so awesome to get. And my mother also, she still has life insurance for me too. And she's like, I was like, Mom, get rid of it. There's no dollar amount in it, so we got to figure out what to do with it. Anyways, but those are the types of things that if you're thinking long game, you won't go broke. You know what broke my heart a little bit was I was walking. So I was walking down Sunset in Hollywood, Los Angeles, and I saw these two homeless kids, not and when I mean kids, I know I'm 30 and I'm wearing a unicorn hat and I could probably look past 12. But when I mean kids, I mean 19, 21. These were like two people.
Okay.
Right. They're or 21, maybe 24. Right. They moved to LA to live the LA dream. And then they got into the industry and got chewed up and spat out. The entertainment industry, if you don't, it is ruthless, from what I remember. Can I still survive in it? Like yes, I can. Just because it's something that you have to build. It's like a way to really understand tenacity, creativity, and doing it under stress. Entertainment, in my opinion, is the place where you go to become a diamond. Like you really build yourself there. These kids got spat out, and when you get spat out of entertainment, especially if you don't have support from a parental figure,
I can imagine that being very rough.
It's like being spat out of the military. I kid you not. Yeah, the PTSD is just the same. Less dying, but there is a mental game that comes with the environment.
I have family who's military, so I completely understand that kind of devastation.
It's very similar.
That comes with it, with your dream being crushed.
Yeah. So when I was talking to this kid, like these two individuals, one of them, she was homeless, and I was like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "I have COVID. Like, you should stay away from me." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Okay, thanks." So I like walked away a little bit, but she was perfectly educated. Like I could hear it in her voice. Something tells me she actually had a college degree. Wow. This other kid, 19 years old, freaking fast, smart, could get it. Him and his girlfriend and his newborn child were in a homeless center. And the thing that was getting them stuck was because they didn't have the financial education. I actually worked with one of those kids. Something told me to like call him every week. And he was like, "I'm looking for a mentor." And I'm like, because he asked me something specific. He was like, "I need $25 for a storage unit." If you're telling me a purpose behind something,
right,
and it's not $300 or $5 for food, there's something sincere to that.
True.
Right. So I sat down with him and I talked with him and figured out a few things. He didn't even have a social security card. By the time that I basically practiced results coaching with him for 3 weeks, I built a book, and he got a job, and then was able to get him out of the homeless center. It was the craziest thing. I was like,
"That's wonderful, though."
Thank you. But these are the basic life skills that people don't know. And it's like, how come we haven't taught people this? Like I had to learn it to a degree. I guess if you're in New York City, you learn that stuff. But like, because there's even Miley Cyrus, I think she actually brought somebody on stage with her to like him, her, they, them. I'm not sure what she's going by anymore. But she brought this guy up and basically said, "Hey, I want you all to hear this." And this kid was, I keep saying kid. This kid was college educated and was homeless because he didn't have the education for the practical skills he needed to get himself out of homelessness, let alone understand how to utilize his finances. People have been paying entry-level positions from like, I think 2014 to 2017, or hopefully they've changed. They've been paying entry-level positions 30 grand when the market and like living expenses have quadrupled.
Yeah.
Of course you're going to get a very sad bracket of people that are going into homelessness now.
Well, that, and there's the combination of all the college debt
Yes.
that a lot of these I'm switching to young adults instead of kids, but it's pretty much the same thing. This age between 18 and 24, for those who have gone into college, they now have, most of them, I will say, have some kind of student debt, which I found out how devastating that could be, which is why with Austin, my son, we started early with trying to find scholarships that he could apply for to help cover the cost, so he doesn't have any student debt.
Yeah, I think I still have student debt. Like,
oh, goodness.
Notice how I said I think, right? Remember
Right.
how we had that debt relief thing that was going on? I'm like, oh, you haven't. One, that's an incredible initiative that I believe is the most important thing that I've ever heard of in my entire life. Two, not everyone knew how to negotiate their college debt as well. If you didn't
Right.
have a salary as a
Graduate.
thank you. You actually can like call and say, hey, I don't have a salary. Can we defer payment for a couple months? You can do that. It's the same thing with what's it called? With your credit cards.
See, now that's something that I didn't even know, and I don't think my sister know with all of her college expenses and everything like that.
If it is if it's a public a student loan, that's a federal loan, yeah, you can negotiate back and say like, hey, so I'm not making any money right now. Can we defer? Can we change the numeric value to $0 a month until I have salary? And you can do that.
See, something new that I'm learning.
Yeah,
so I don't have college debt, but it's still good to know because I know family members, I know friends who have kids in college and have student loans for their kids. So I appreciate that input.
Yeah, thank you for giving me that feedback. It's true. I all right, so I was going through a really rough patch.
We don't know what we don't know, so
yeah, so I was going through an insane rough patch when I left my corporate job, and I did it on my own volition. That's another thing, by the way. I was like, I'll figure it out.
Right.
If you're not prepared for that, don't do that.
Yeah, you need to have, for lack of a better term, an exit strategy.
Yes, you should have 3 to 4 months of rent saved, and you should have some type of savings that can kind of pull you over into the next year, right? Some people don't, and you're fine. You can even do unemployment. You should have a health insurance plan for that year, right? I nosedove, didn't have any of this stuff because I was a interesting human.
See, I always made sure I had the next job lined up. Every time I quit a job, I knew what I was going to be doing 2 weeks later.
What was funny was like, I was fired twice when I was in entertainment, right? It also, side note, it is also the other industry where you can fail upwards. Every time I got fired, I got a higher position somewhere else. It was weird, but
hey, that's good news though.
It was great. I was just like, okay, I guess this is how this works. But also just, notifying every time I got fired, I knew how to get myself back up. I knew how to file for the unemployment that I needed. I knew how to balance, and like I could take 3 months off. I remember I took 3 months off after the second time I was fired because I was just like, you know what? I need to figure out my life because I don't know if I want to go back to this. And I remember I traveled for like 4 months straight. Kid you not. I had somebody Airbnb-ing my apartment. So I was literally making half my rent without me like needing to do anything. If I needed to make up for the rest of my bills, I would Postmate in Beverly Hills where they give you $40 minimum as a tip. Like I just like figured it out. Like, right. And of course I didn't have kids and I didn't have a fur baby. So like my stability it was oddly there because I knew what to do, which was really interesting. And by the time I was bored was when I applied for a job. Like,
No, I get that completely, because when I lost my corporate job, I think I moped, and I moped, I'll admit that, for about maybe 2 weeks, until I reached out to my mom, because I was still furloughed at this point. I had just done nothing for 2 weeks, my first 2 weeks of furlough. And then I reached out to my mom and I said, is there anything I can do to support your business or the Teen Suicide Prevention Society so I don't get bored? I will never, never say that sentence to my mom again, because I have been busy ever since. So I'm not bored. But it got me through that process, and it prevented me from going into pure devastation when I did get the notice that I was being terminated, because I did feel like I was losing part of my identity.
You were working there for a while too, right?
Almost 14 years.
Yeah, I can understand that. Wow.
So yeah, for most of my son's life, I was working at Nationwide.
Wow.
For most of my son's life, I was working a corporate job.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I totally understand. And the places I worked, I'm probably gonna share it, it's fine. But
yeah, I can't. So that's why
oh, is it legally binding?
It can come back and bite me in the butt.
Okay.
Nationwide has gone after ex-employees for saying things that they should not.
Gotcha. All right.
So that's why I corrected it to say my corporate job.
Gotcha. I read all my NDAs and all my contracts, so I know exactly what I'm allowed to say. So it's cool. Also, just like because of California, just the way that California is like employment legalities are so fascinating. Like you can work at one place and tell the next place their secrets and they want you to. It is the creepiest thing. I'm like, this is weird, whatever. But
wow, that is like the complete opposite to what it is here.
Honestly, it's just a California thing. I don't think it's anywhere else. Like it's weird. I remember going through the contracts and thinking, wait, I can share this? What? And then I remember asking one of my colleagues at the old place that I worked at, I'm like, can I really share this information? And they were like, yeah, no, you can say anything you want. I'm like, you made me read all of this. Like, it was like, you wanted me to tell people anything. I had no idea that was like actually a thing. And I was so loyal. Like I never shared any of the secrets until I found that out like a year later. I was like, I'm not going to share any. I even went to one of their competitors and they asked me questions about what was happening because like, all right, so fun facts, small tangent. But I had a business partner that wanted to work with me and she was from a competing talent agency when I was in entertainment, when I was producing. Like this was the first gig I got out of working corporate. And the most fascinating thing about it. So she takes me to this competing talent agency and they're asking me questions about the talent agency that I worked at prior to. And I'm sitting there looking at them like, like I was going to spill details. And I said nothing. I was so confused. And I was actually mad at that business partner for actually trying to breach that type of integrity. And I like stopped working with her because of that.
Wow.
I was so upset. I was like, I don't do that. And now it looks like I did.
Well, the whole integrity part from that aspect, from sharing secrets for whoever your employer is, also falls into the integrity of your finances. Because if you hold your job in such high regard because of the rules of your corporate job, you should apply that to the rules of your finances.
Join us next week as Katie and Ace continue their talk on finances and how it applies in your life, business, and in your future.